From Mighty Ducks to Dawson to Fringe to today, what is the most intense fan experience you've ever had in your life?
Probably the most intense thing that I've ever seen was
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Mr. Jackson, I'm actually going to start with you. I'd like to think or hope that most people have never experienced anyone, I guess, as intense as Alex Forrest in their lives. But you've been in the business a while. You've worked with enough iconic projects, and I would imagine you've at least had some really intense fan experiences over your career. So from Mighty Ducks to Dawson to Fringe to today, what is the most intense fan experience you've ever had in your life?
no bunny boilers. So we can start there. That's good.
Always good. Always
I thought
good
the
to get that out
question
of the
was
way.
going to be which actress have you worked with who's the most
Because
like
that's
Alex
a list.
Forrest.
I got a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, we can answer that because that's a great question.
I'm trying to think.
Names.
This is going way, way back. It didn't actually happen to me, but it was something that I witnessed. Probably the most intense thing that I've ever seen was way back in the Dawson's days. Back when they used to use minivans to drive to set. We pull up in the minivan. The whole cast is in the minivan. We pile out. We were shooting some high school scene. It must have been in season 2 because the show had already come out. Anyway, whenever it was, we pile out of the minivan, and James is the last to come out. And there's like a group of background actors standing in front of us. We pile out of the car, and this little girl, not little girl, this young woman, probably in her mid-teens, sees James, screams, like a high-pitched, like, ah, comes out of her, and then faints. That's the most intense thing I think I've ever seen. Like, dead away faints. Like, not a swoon, an actual, like, oh my God, she's on the ground.
That's
faint. Yeah, so that's probably
crazy.
the most intense thing I've ever seen.
That's going to be hard to top that.
Yeah.
Ms. Caplan, between Alex Forrest and Annie Wilkes, you've been able to give your spin on two of the greatest villains of all time. They're both roles that are on AFI's top villains list. They're both Oscar recognized, both iconic, but each so wildly different from each other. So I'm curious, what was the biggest difference between playing Alex and Annie, and what was the most interesting maybe commonality, like a through line that connected them?
I think the differences are the Castle Rock story felt very much like a prequel to Misery, and so it was really important for me to have my Annie Wilkes feel like somebody who could eventually grow into the Kathy Bates Annie Wilkes. Like if you put my Annie Wilkes in a house by herself in the middle of nowhere for enough years, she would become Kathy Bates. So that felt like something that I really wanted to grab a lot of inspiration from what Kathy Bates did. To me, there's only one way to play Annie Wilkes, and it's the way that she did it. For Fatal Attraction, because our story takes place in a totally different city, time period, I mean, so much of it is different that I think the film, more than anything, was a jumping off point rather than this being a direct remake. And so it felt like for Fatal Attraction, it wasn't about trying to channel as much as possible from what Glenn Close did in her incredible performance, but rather to create something new.
I have to tell you, I interviewed Kathy Bates as Castle Rock was airing. I interviewed her for a film that she was doing, and I said, "Are you watching Castle Rock right now?" She goes, "How good is Lizzy Caplan?" I go, "I know." So we got to geek out.
It was crazy.
I
Sent me a gift. Like, she's amazing. She's
I've got that on tape. Like they were still rolling as I was walking out the door, and so I'll send it to you.
That's the wildest praise. That performance is like God.
Yeah,
I'm so obsessed.
That was phenomenal. Well, you mentioned Glenn Close. Now that you've each been able to give your spin on roles made famous by Michael Douglas and Glenn Close, I'm curious, Josh, if you could see Michael play one of your past roles, and Lizzy, if you could see Glenn Close play one of yours,
today,
100% Pacey.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I would watch that.
Yeah. Me too.
And Lizzy, which role would you like to see Glenn Close do?
Oh my God, Pacey.
She could pull it off.
I just want to see everybody do a take on Pacey.
Yeah. It's the bowl cut.
Yeah.
I just want to see everybody in a bowl cut.
And that's the role that finally gets her Oscar.
I mean, at this point, I feel like, how many times has she been nominated? Like
far too many.
Yeah, I think that translates into like at least 4 actual Oscar wins. Like, what's the difference at this point?
Yeah. In my heart, she has an Oscar.
Same.
But seriously, the guys, they're giving the wrap about 10,000 more questions I wish I could ask you. But seriously, you're absolutely phenomenal, and you guys are always so kind. I really do appreciate you. Thank you for having fun with me.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good
Have
to
a
see
good
you.
one.
And cut.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.